8-core or 10-core, M4 iMac is on fire. This is the base model 8-core CPU M4 iMac. And in this video, I'm gonna make the argument that the 8-core base model iMac is plenty of computer for almost everyone. And also that the $200 it costs to upgrade just one level to the 10-core is actually worth doing. And yes, those two things do contradict one another. I see that. Okay, so first, the 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU base model iMac. This thing is actually equal to Apple's weakest current generation offering as far as raw CPU power goes. This particular configuration is only available in the iMac and the M4 MacBook Air. Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro both start at 10 cores. Who makes these decisions? I don't know. And with the iMac, I actually think it's fine just to get the smallest default storage option, the 256 gig internal drive, and then just plug in external storage, since generally once you set it up, your computer is not gonna move ever. With these Thunderbolt external NVMe drives, external storage can actually be faster than internal storage now, for the same size SSDs. And somewhat recently, macOS started letting you download apps through the App Store natively straight to an external drive. So it treats those apps as if they're installed on the computer normally. That way you can leave it so you just have the system software running on the internal drive. And then because of this new little checkbox in the App Store, you can send any downloaded apps to run off your external drive. These things open up really easily so you can just upgrade them at your leisure. And for like a quarter of the price of upgrading your iMac internal drive. With system RAM, it's more of a personal budget situation. More RAM is always better than less RAM, but macOS has gotten so good at real-time RAM compression that 16 gigabytes now is literally, truly, without an exaggeration, every bit as useful as 32 gigabytes of RAM was with the Intel Macs, pre-Apple Silicon. Apple Silicon. I still don't know what to say for that. So unless you know you need more than 16 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes will suit you just fine. Anyway, as far as upgrading from 8-core to 10-core, while you might be inclined to think that 10 cores is gonna be 25% more power than 8 cores, that's pretty straightforward math. What's not immediately obvious, unless you read Apple's spec sheets, is that both the 10-core and the 8-core iMacs have the same number of performance cores. These both have 4 performance CPU cores. When you upgrade to the 10-core CPU, you're getting 2 additional efficiency cores. It won't actually feel any faster inside the apps. It's the performance cores that do the front end, heavy lifting, computery things that you actually notice. Compiling code, rendering things, opening apps super fast, unzipping things, and actually doing whatever thing in whatever program you're using in the moment. The performance cores do what you think of when you think of a CPU running. The efficiency cores run with a lot less power and at a lower clock speed. They're the ones syncing iCloud files, managing Spotlight indexing, running low priority system daemons, whatever that actually is, and handling background tasks like keeping a download going while you're doing Photoshop or running your Plex server. When you open Activity Monitor and you see these hundreds of things happening and none of them make any sense, that's all E-cores. They keep the plugins and the helpers and the whole system functioning in the background without pulling much extra power from the wall. Efficiency cores are the reason you can leave a Mac computer running 24 hours a day, and while you're not actively sitting at it, they're only gonna pull like 4 watts of electricity. And if the figure 4 watts doesn't mean anything to you, that's gonna cost about 16 cents for every 250 hours this computer's running to just leave your Mac on all the time. My Windows tower back there, for instance, pulls about 50 to 100 watts when it's idling, just as a reference. Actually, that was a tangent, but it's E-cores. The extra cores are E-cores. When you upgrade from 8 cores to 10 cores, you won't actually feel a speed increase in the responsiveness of your computer while you're using it. Things will not open faster, video projects will not export any faster, the snappiness of the computer won't feel any different. But those E-cores are not all you get. The GPU cores jump from 8 cores to 10 cores also. And that is simply a straightforward 25% increase in graphics capabilities. Again though, if your use case for a computer does not include gaming or LLM research or 3D design, you still won't notice. In fact, someone with a desk job who's just using Microsoft 365 apps all day long would not notice a difference between the 8-core iMac and a 32-core Mac Studio. Most apps just run on a handful of CPU cores, and throwing more cores at those apps wouldn't make them run any differently. I just have a bag of holding full of Mac computers on my lap. This computer is perfect for office work, for graphic design work, for music production, unless you're one of those commenters from my other videos who uses dozens of AI plugins on Logic Pro, but you already know what you need. Even for video editing. Just like the base model Mac Mini that I talked about a few weeks ago, this computer, the base model iMac, could easily be my main video editing computer with no compromise. All of that said, I made a bit of a discovery while messing around with this thing and benchmarking it with some Lightroom tests, some Final Cut Pro stuff, and some Cinebench stuff. A discovery that literally led to me immediately ordering another iMac, delivered to me the same day so I could finish making this video. The 8-core iMac overheats and thermal throttles. Kinda bad when you push it really hard. With me now to explain the cooling differences in these two Macs is Dr. Timothy Tetweiler.
This one has 2 fans, and this one has 1.
Thank you, Dr. Tetweiler. That was very clear. It turns out Apple did put cooling fans in the iMacs, but the base model 8-core iMac only gets 1 fan. I will say it's a very quiet fan, but clearly whatever heat exchanger they have it paired with is not enough to remove the full load of heat when this thing's running flat out. Once you bump up to the 10-core CPU, and let me remind you, it's just 2 additional efficiency cores, so not that much overall extra power, but the 10-core version of the iMac comes with 2 fans, so twice the cooling capacity for just a little bit more power. One thing you also get when spending that $200 is an Ethernet jack. Perhaps Apple's weirdest Ethernet jack to date. It's built into the power brick rather than the actual computer, which I guess means this sort of MagSafe plug they've switched to for power in the back of the iMac is also passing data, not just power. It's only gigabit Ethernet, but if you've got a Mac in your house, you really might as well be running a Plex server on it so that you can watch any shows that you download on any TV in your house. This does work over Wi-Fi, but a wired connection is just going to be more robust. Plus, you should also really have a file backup system on site also, anyway. And being hardwired to that will make file transfers and backups more reliable and faster. I feel like I might be pushing wired Ethernet too much here. I'm gonna stop. In addition to the Ethernet port, you get 2 more Thunderbolt ports. The base model only comes with 2, every other model comes with 4, and evidently that affects Apple's display engine hardware inside because the 8-core model can drive its own display plus 1 external display up to 6K, where the 10-core model can drive 2 external displays. And both models have no problem pushing pixels to my gigantic 49-inch ultra-wide monitor, even at 120 Hertz, which in my experience now is 100% pointless, but really fun to use. Final difference I found after getting everything set up is that both of these computers come with a Magic Mouse and a keyboard. But the keyboard on the 10-core model has Touch ID, where the keyboard on the 8-core model does not. So all these things together, I think it's worth the extra couple $100. You'll no doubt be able to keep these computers for like 8 years before you really need to upgrade. So that's like 7 cents a day for all these extra features. I can do girl math. If you are trying to save the money, I've got good news for video editors and video creators. There is no difference in export speed when you upgrade from 8 cores to 10 cores. A huge majority of the Final Cut Pro's exporting happens on Apple's media engine, and both the 8-core and 10-core versions of this iMac have the same media engine. The thing that really triggers the performance difference between these is thermal throttling, but there is very little heat produced from video editing or exporting. So even though the base model only has 1 fan, it's plenty to keep it cool, and it will not thermal throttle when you're doing video stuff. But with video editing, these 2 computers are effectively the same. I just keep picking this thing back up. And that's if you're making videos that are equal to or less complex than what you see on my channel. This is a 12-minute video shot in H.265. You're seeing playback during the edit running on the 8-core iMac, even with stacks of layers on an effect. And this is with the magnetic mask running in real time, and everything in full resolution. This is a project shot in 4K with 2 cameras, meaning the computer has to render 2 simultaneous 4K streams plus all these layered effects, and it's not dropping any frames at all. The scrubbing is super responsive. Final Cut Pro exports this 12-minute video in 6 minutes and 55 seconds on the 8-core iMac, and the 10-core iMac finished within a couple of seconds exporting the same video. As far as video editing, these computers are the same, and I run the projects on an external drive while editing. No problems there either. Lightroom. I always like to do a great big raw photo to JPEG export in Lightroom as a test when I get my hands on a new Mac computer, because unlike doing a Cinebench test or a Blender render test, those 2 will stress the CPUs altogether or the GPU, a great test for overall raw power of the computer, but neither of them stress the CPUs and GPUs together, where Adobe has figured out a way to use the entirety of your computer's processing power to export photos. So P-core, E-core, and GPUs will all go to 100%, which effectively turns this test into a challenge of the cooling system more than anything else. This was the test where I was able to get the MacBook Air to beat the MacBook Pro with the same specs by heavily modifying the air to keep its motherboard cool. When a Mac computer starts to overheat after it's spun its fans up all the way, its next and final recourse to stop that overheating is to slow down the CPU cores, which brings down the heat, but it also makes everything go slower. So in doing this, with the base model 8-core iMac, the CPU speed quickly reduces from 4 GHz down under 2 GHz and pretty much stays there for the entirety of the export. And strangely, even after it's gotten its heat a little under control, it just stays at 1.6 to 1.8 GHz, doesn't speed back up. The 10-core iMac has enough cooling to run its processors in the 3 GHz range throughout this entire export, which means it's not only getting the extra 25% bump by having 2 extra GPU cores and 2 efficiency cores, it's getting a bump across all cores because when they all stay cool, they can all run a little faster together. So with 1,200 raw photos exported, I think this computer took something like 7 minutes and something on the 8-core, and the 10-core was able to do that same thing in a little over 4 minutes. So just a little less than twice as fast. Again though, that's only important or even noticeable at all when you're doing things to your computer that stresses it entirely and for a prolonged period of time. And it's not like thermal throttling hurts your computer. So if you need to occasionally export 1,000 photos because, I don't know, you went to a wedding or something, that's the kind of thing you just start it and then walk away from your computer. Go do something else. If you were to set these computers side by side and just use them at school or in an office, as a graphic designer or as a writer or as a streamer or as a video editor, I don't think that you would know which one's which. I don't think you'd know which one you were using in a blind test. Video games. iMacs are not AAA gaming computers. If we're talking Sneaky Sasquatch or Angry Birds, iMacs are absolutely gaming computers. But when we get into the few big games that have actually come out on the Mac, let's start by looking at Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's a bit underwhelming, even down at 1080p, averaging around 25 to 30 frames per second. If you want to play at 720p, sure, the game looks like it's running on a Nintendo GameCube from 2010, but it is locked in at 30 frames per second, so technically it can handle it. Cyberpunk, on the other hand, I guess they're doing a little bit better job at optimization, because I got the 8-core iMac to run that game benchmark not even at 1080p, but at 1440p, and still maintain a locked-in 30 frames per second. That's actually pretty surprising. The 10-core model did do a little better on both, but this is still pretty underpowered for AAA gaming. But that said, on Assassin's Creed Shadows at 1080p, we are at a steady 30 frames per second. Moving on to value for your money. And while we're talking about money really quick, most of my viewers, look at that, 92% of the people watching this are not subscribed to the channel. I will make more money if more of you subscribe. And I love money so much. Click it. Make this my full-time job. At 100,000 subscribers, I will give away a Mac computer. How about that? Okay, value for your money. These screens are really nice. They're also really reflective. As far as I can tell, this screen is exactly like the Apple Studio display. Where is that thing? I have one right here to compare them, so I'm not just making that up. It's the same pixel density, it's just as bright. It's actually only a tiny bit smaller than the Studio display. This is the Studio display, this is the iMac. Try to get those into the frame together. But this is a very high quality screen. That said, I do welcome the comments from those of you who say 60 Hz refresh rate is just too primitive and disgusting for your 120 Hz brain vision. It will push 120 Hz to an external display, if that's any kind of caveat for you. There's no system performance degradation if you run this screen and the ultra-wide 120 Hz monitor at the same time. Go nuts. You could spend less money overall by getting a Mac Mini and then a super cheap monitor from Amazon. But to get a screen this nice, you'd end up spending quite a bit more than just going with the iMac. Plus, when you buy the Mac Mini, it literally comes with just the computer and a power cord, while the iMac comes with everything you need to use it right away. Keyboard, mouse, screen. Convenience abound. You could spend more money and get an M4 MacBook Pro. The performance on this iMac will be on par with both the M4 MacBook Pro and the M4 Mac Mini. So what you end up buying really should just come down to how you want to use it. Obviously, a new MacBook Pro will travel to Starbucks a whole lot easier than trying to put an iMac under your arm and walk down the street. I think the only reason to get a Mac Mini, well, there are two reasons. One, if you plan to use a gargantuan sized monitor and don't want this 24-inch screen, then the Mac Mini's better. Or if you're planning to go for the cheapest imaginable Mac desktop setup, then a Mini with a super cheap, like Robbie's Scepter monitor and an Amazon Basics keyboard and mouse are the way to go. If you are a video editor or a creator, it's probably going to be a good idea to pair this with some sort of dock, because I assume you'll want an SD card slot and an external drive with even more storage, and then just a plethora of ports to plug all your things into. And you can get a USB-C hub that has storage built into it, so you don't have to have so many things hanging off the back of your computer. Or, I don't know, have a lot of things hanging off the back of your computer. I'm certainly no cord management minimalist myself. I have a stupid amount of things plugged into my computers all the time. I'm docks on docks on docks. To accessorize. The rest of this is not necessary, and I'm not reading you an ad. These are actual things that I've bought and I think are good to have. My favorite clacky keyboard got discontinued, which was a bummer because it's cheap and also good. Now I'm on to this Keychron one. It's less cheap, but more good. It's got a really good sound. It's wired or wireless, and it's programmable, so you can assign macros to whatever keys you want. Apple tends to make you type in your password a lot when you're installing things or just doing things, but I have this keyboard set so that F12 just types my very long password. There's also a volume dial, which I quite like. And it's a button too. For hubs, I've got this adorable Wakius M5 hub. This little screen does extend to your computer. It's Thunderbolt, so everything's super fast. Like I said, it's got storage built into it. So there's a, what do I got in here? A 2 terabyte NVMe SSD that's going at 40 gigabits per second. Gigabits, I think like 5 or 6 gigabytes per second. SD card slots, a whole bunch of ports on it, and it looks like a retro Mac, but it kind of costs a lot. I also use this much cheaper Oracle one that does mostly the same thing. This also has storage built into it. Also got SD card slots. It's got an Ethernet jack on it, so you pay quite a bit less. You get a little bit less speed, but it's super useful. And then this king, the Thunderbolt 5 external NVMe SSD enclosure. Except I checked and this is discontinued also. That's a bummer, but Ugreen makes one that's just as good. Also has a fan. A fan is super important with Thunderbolt 5 external drives because they get really hot. Big transfers will slow down if you don't keep it cool. And finally, totally optionally, but I love a fast network because I keep my past video projects on a big NAS box back there. I use this Oracle USB-C to 10 gigabits Ethernet adapter, so file transfers from my NAS go super fast. Links to all this stuff below. And I have talked for way too long at this point. I'm gonna go now. Goodbye. This is a Publix donut. Actually might be my favorite.